At every single level, our players are situated, just for clarity, Kazuki Kobayashi on the left there against Hirofumi Kimura on the right. The players laughing and joking a little bit. We see the Umbreon situated next to Hirofumi, one of his signature Pokemon, and even though Kazuki has got a Vileplume on the stage with him, that's not going to be featuring in his team. No Vileplumes with substitutes this time.
Yeah, but it's certainly nice to have a little, Pokemon of comfort with you when you're on such a grand stage. Kazuki Kobayashi, had a pretty formidable showing this year at the Japan National Championships, making top 64, getting top 32 back in 2017. And again, that team featuring the Yveltal, the Groudon, the Metagross, the Incineroar, the Tapu Koko, and the Mimikyu. That Yveltal, sort of the underdog story in my opinion when it comes to restricted Pokemon, standing strong, standing proud here in top 4.
Yeah, it's been really tough to call how well it was doing, and I think now we've got a very clear answer. It's top 4 quality.
Great.
Yeah, it's really, really good to see that come to the fore at a time when it is just needed. We do see the players getting real close to starting up for you guys. But to see a top Japanese player, this is a player who's been putting on good performances against players from all around the world. And his nationals, really, the only exposure he's had to some of these tournaments, not the same pedigree as some of the players, particularly I think the North American and European players, because they play so many tournaments like the regionals, like the international championships, they do end up with this laundry list of achievements. And maybe that's why some people rule out the achievements of some of the Japanese players. There are literally 2 achievements on Hirofumi Kimura's sheet right there, and they're pretty clear.
Yeah, 100% of the time in the past 2 years, he's been the Japan national champion, and that is such an incredible accomplishment because their format is just so different than the one we've seen, played out here at the World Championships. He had to qualify via a series of online tournaments. He had to play then a single elimination tournament until he made it into top cut of the Japan Championships when they switched over to best of 3. But certainly a very interesting, approach. And he had a very interesting team as well, choosing to use Necrozma and the Rayquaza to sort of represent those 2 restricted Pokemon to that tournament. He definitely switched things up going into this tournament, as you can see on screen. He still has his buddy Necrozma there, but that Groudon taking the place of the Rayquaza and a Kangaskhan Salamence both have the potential to Mega Evolve, which I think is something very interesting to highlight. Tapu Lele and Umbreon sort of rounding out that team.
Yeah, I do like the use of the Necrozma, the Dustmane variety. We did talk about it yesterday. We talked about it, when we were having a chat before this tournament. I know a few of us were talking about it. The Dustmane Necrozma was something that Japan were talking about, they were practicing with, they were winning with, and to see one make top 4. I like that both the Japanese representatives in this top 4, they've both stuck with Groudon, which a lot of people, I think, in Europe and North America, particularly those western regions, I guess, have been overlooking a little bit with the prevalence of Kyogre, but then they've paired it up with something unique, something that's not seen as much in the Dustmane Necrozma and the Yveltal. It's really exciting to me to see those teams come to the fore, and while the Dark type is present on Kazuki's team, there is also a Dark type over on Hirofumi's team, and it's Umbreon. Yeah, it's not something any of us were really expecting over the course of this tournament. I know we saw it struggle a little bit earlier, raised a couple of questions in that regard, but it's made it all the way through, not just into top cut, but all the way along from top 16, top 8, and into top 4.
Yeah, and Hirofumi certainly has had the opportunity to learn that, that Umbreon might not be the best matchup against an Yveltal team. It's hard to say how he's going to approach this game 1. Unfortunately, we don't know if these trainers have faced off earlier on in the tournament or not, but we do know from, Kazuki's past games, he likes that Yveltal. I think he used that Yveltal very well in the past. He applied a lot of pressure with the Sucker Punch. We saw some Snarls to drop special attack, and it's really just a very interesting Pokemon. No Xerneas to threaten it either. Looking at Hirofumi's team, looking at those Pokemon, it's going to be very hard for something to hit it for super effective damage, unfortunately. And as a result, I think that it's going to mean that this Yveltal is going to be a very key player. So, Hirofumi just in a great spot, Kazuki in a great spot, and I can't wait to see how these trainers are going to match up as they get ready to start this top 4 match here at the Pokemon World Championships. Top 4.
Yeah, these matches are always huge.
4.
We do see the players just taking it in for a brief moment, getting ready to go into this game, and it looks to me like they're about to hit Team Preview. Yveltal, Groudon, Tapu Koko, Metagross, Incineroar, Mimikyu. Quick refresher there for you guys for Kazuki. And then Hirofumi, Duskmane Necrozma, Tapu Lele, Kangaskhan, Salamence, Groudon, and Umbreon. I love the choice of Mega Pokemon here. This is something that we've seen in previous years, particularly way back when Mega Pokemon first became a concern in the video game championships. A lot of people bought this double Mega team, as it was dubbed, and you had that choice depending on the matchup. Of course, when we look at Kazuki's options, only one there in the choice of Metagross, but Metagross has always matched up quite nicely against them. It matches up real nicely against the Tapu Lele, of course, terrified of the Groudon.
Very terrified, and I think that's something that Kazuki has to keep in mind as he goes into this team preview. Hirofumi locking in pretty confidently the 4 Pokemon that he wants to bring into this game. Again, I think Yveltal is going to be a very key Pokemon for Kazuki, and sort of to break that down, you have to look at what Pokemon will be able to support that Yveltal the best. Yveltal has to worry about that Tapu Lele on Hirofumi's side of the field, since Tapu Lele does get access to Moonblast. He has to worry about it getting worn down maybe by powerful attacks from the Salamence or the Kangaskhan once they've Mega Evolved. And as a result, I think that, Kazuki, if he decides that this is the best sort of approach for him, he needs to bring that Metagross or that Incineroar along with him, just so that he can properly threaten that Tapu Lele and give Yveltal the room it needs to sort of, succeed, to bring that momentum with it.
I think that Yveltal is going to be make or break for Kazuki. If he can find openings to use it and really cause a lot of problems, we have seen a number of different options for those Necrozmas. If it can capitalize on those, then he's going to be in a fantastic position. The game, though, is about to start. We do see one of the leads, a little sneak peek for us, while you guys are made to wait. And I'm so interested to start breaking this one down. A full-on restricted pairing for Kazuki Kobayashi. The Yveltal and Groudon just facing off against a very much non-restricted pairing for his opponent in Umbreon and Tapu Lele.
Well, certainly the Umbreon will be able to snarl this Groudon. We did see Kazuki earlier on in the stream. We know that it had, some of those special options that it brings along with it. So certainly would not appreciate the snarl, but I think the most important thing to look at in terms of this board position, in terms of this Umbreon, is the fact that it is staring down an Yveltal. The dark aura that Yveltal brings with it to the field is going to help this Umbreon deal more damage. What moves does Umbreon have to deal damage? Foul play, maybe a snarl. Those are going to add up after a while. And with the Tapu Lele sitting next to it on the field, you have to wonder if Kimura's strategy is to just immediately threaten Yveltal, which is really the key Pokemon in this matchup, the key Pokemon that can threaten that Necrozma, get it off the field, or otherwise maybe even remove it from play to make room for that Necrozma to come in, deal damage, and just be a threat.
I think this is going to be a much better showcase for Umbreon, actually. I say that as soon as it leaves the field. That is the ultimate commentator's curse. It's subbed out for a Salamence. So Salamence bringing Intimidate to the field. Very important ability in so many of these games. We'll see if both the Pokemon decide to stick around. Of course, we are going to see a Protect from this Yveltal. A little bit concerned about potential, say, Moonblasts coming through. And a Protect as well from Groudon. So really, Kazuki Kobayashi just taking his time, scouting out the potential moves, and giving himself more information to adapt. Both of the Pokemon over on Kazuki's side of the field were going to be taking damage in that instance, giving us an information and an insight into that Tapu Lele's move choice of Dazzling Gleam.
Certainly an interesting pick. I really like that, though. Fairly safe, gives Kimura the opportunity to get some nice chip damage down on both this Groudon and that Yveltal. Will still deal super effective damage to that Yveltal as well. And if these trainers decide to take a slow approach to this game, to really feel their opponent out, see how they want to play this, it's that chip damage that's really going to add up over time. And it looks like Salamence might have just been brought in for that Intimidate.
As soon as Salamence enters, Salamence leaves. That comes back for the Umbreon, so we're pretty much back where we started on Kimura's side of the field. But that's now going to be facing down an Incineroar as the Yveltal leaves, removing Dark Aura from play, which may become a little bit important, and landing an Intimidate on 2 Pokemon that I really don't think care about it. We are going to open up with a Dazzling Gleam from this Tapu Lele. Really, not that much damage on either Pokemon. Of course, those Fire types certainly helping out. and it's going to be a big attack from this Groudon. Looks like the hidden power. I say big as in more exciting. That's the animation for hidden power, guys, and that's not enough. It was targeting down a Salamence, so make your own judgments on what type it is.
All we can say for certain is that it did okay damage against an Umbreon, so maybe we'll wait to confirm what type that hidden power might have been when that move shows up again in the future. But again, just a very interesting play by Hirofumi, just going in and giving his Salamence the opportunity to intimidate a Groudon, maybe a Groudon he assumed was running those more offensive physical attacks, and then send the Umbreon in to take damage.
Well, Kimura Hirofumi continuing with the Dazzling Gleams, of course, the common item Choice Scarf on the Tapu Lele, and not giving him the option to switch it up. In return, has to take an Eruption for his troubles. It's going to bring down Tapu Lele exceptionally low, bring down Umbreon quite low as well before the activation of the Citrus Berry. A foul play following up there from Umbreon into that Groudon, but probably not going to be the largest amount of damage. Not only was it intimidated, it is a Groudon that relies on its special attack, so maybe trained in a way that lowers its physical attack, makes it a little bulkier in regards to dealing with something like a foul play, and really small amounts of damage coming out from Kimura Hirofumi, not getting him there, I don't think.
Not getting him there, and leaving his own Pokemon within knockout range from a spread move from either this Groudon or maybe even the Tapu Koko that was just sent in by Kazuki. It's certainly, Eruption is certainly one of those moves that you want to use when you are at full health, but if you're in a situation like this when your opponent's options are really either to switch out one of their Pokemon on the field and maybe continue to do a bit of chip damage with the Dazzling Gleam from that Tapu Lele, you feel kind of safe going for something like an Eruption. Certainly, if Kazuki wants to try and predict a switch, maybe the return of that Salamence that we saw earlier, he might be able to actually connect the hidden power this turn. But, I mean, the options here, the big question is, did Kazuki go for it?
We'll see exactly how he decides to play out this turn. A Salamence does return to the field in place of that Umbreon. The Dazzling Gleams just keep coming. They're not doing that much damage to Groudon, but the damage on Tapu Koko, I'd argue, is pretty significant, leaving just above half. That said, the Electro Web landing on both the Pokemon, enough in the electric terrain to knock out this Tapu Lele. That's going to get knocked out, but the speed drop will stick on this Salamence. This could get really troublesome. It's going to be an Eruption. Of course, Salamence the Dragon type. It is single target. There has been a good amount of damage down on Groudon. It's really just not that big a concern. But the first knockout of the game, heading towards Kazuki Kobayashi, putting that in his favor, and he finally gets to see his opponent's final Pokemon.
And it is going to be that Groudon, which has a great advantage against the Tapu Koko on Kazuki's side of the field at this point in time. Something like an Electro Web is not going to deal any damage to it. Unfortunately for Kazuki, though, his Groudon has already been significantly weakened. His Tapu Koko certainly can and probably will be knocked out by a ground-type move if this Groudon decides to go for it. So even though Kazuki, is at a Pokemon advantage and certainly had the momentum going into that turn, because Groudon was the Pokemon that Hirofumi revealed on the field, it's just not going to be enough to sort of carry him forward. I think he's going to be forced to adapt here, and how he adapts really depends on what he thinks this Groudon is going to do. Does he go for the Intimidate? Does he go for a switch? Does he let his Groudon get knocked out and sort of make the decision later? Only Kazuki really knows at this point.
Yeah, well, it's going to be an interesting turn or two. Opening up with a Z move. That is, of course, the Fairy type Z move, but you've got to look a little further than just the dance and animation. The way that Tapu Koko hides in that shell gives us a good indication that the Guardian of Alola is climbing out, trying to deal a whole heap of damage to something on Hirofumi's side of the field. Groudon, the premium choice, making it a whole lot easier to knock out. That smug little smackdown of the fist there by the trainer. A very smart move and a really nice adaptation to the things we've usually seen. There is going to be a Tailwind, followed up by Kimura, trying to make sure that Groudon gets some opportunities to attack. But the hidden power will finally connect with Salamence, and it's going to be enough for an easy knockout. It's also super effective, giving us information. The ever-common hidden power Ice is the preferred choice.
And such an interesting tech. I mean, we've seen a lot of Groudons in this tournament, run something like a Dragon Claw to deal some big damage to Rayquaza, but if you're a special Groudon, you can't rely on a physical move necessarily, so hidden power Ice really is your best option to get that knockout.
Well, we talk a little bit, I guess, about how these things work, and we talked about Groudon with the third move slot. So while you've got your fire move, your ground move, if you're special, you know, you're trained in the special attack, you may as well try and get that extra bit down, right? You may as well try and get that extra bit of damage out. And if you can deal with something like Salamence or Rayquaza, it's like the special answer to Rayquaza. While you would have to deal with the strong winds, you do have your Groudon to try and reset. Deal with that and help. So it's certainly not the worst option. I think the Yveltal coming back in, though, is so important. Purely like that because of the Guardian of Alola we saw before, puts it really closely in the range for a Sucker Punch knockout.
And you have to be wondering if that's what Kazuki was thinking going into this turn, getting the Intimidate down on that Groudon as well. You know, their Tailwind is up on the field. If this Yveltal is going to attack before taking damage, Sucker Punch is certainly its best option, but Groudon with the Protect is going to stop that right in its tracks.
Yeah, we'll see exactly what these players decide to do for the rest of the day. Umbreon buys itself a little bit more time on the field. Moonlight coming through.
It's so good in the sun.
Yeah, it heals more up in the sun. So that's really going to cause some problems. I think we talked about it last time we saw Hirofumi on stream, though. You know, the Moonlight buying time is great, but you've got to be doing something with all of that time. Landing Snarls, getting some damage down. Probably not enough. A Protect again from his Groudon. It does not want to get caught by anything on Kazuki's side of the field.
But that's such a weird play because Hirofumi was the one who set up Tailwind. This Groudon is being forced to protect it and just waste those turns.
Yeah, well, we are going to see the foul play landing onto this Incineroar. It's a whole lot of damage. Obviously, the terrain leaving isn't the biggest deal right now. Both of those, Tapu Koko and Tapu Lele, have been removed from play, so no benefits to be gained there. They're just providing a little bit of clarity to where we are at the end of this game. Like you say, you really need to be capitalizing on these Tailwind turns, but I've just not seen it from Kimura Hirofumi.
And there's only one turn of Tailwind left, so looking at the board positioning, looking at Hirofumi's options, you know, again, Yveltal can certainly go for a Sucker Punch against this Groudon, and if and when it does and gets that knockout, which it doesn't look like it happened this turn, instead of Groudon going for an attack, you have to wonder, you know, will this Umbreon be able to take, you know, Hirofumi this game one in this top 4 set?
Well, the Precipice Blades, of course, will not land on Yveltal. Yveltal just makes sure that it can get a knockout there with a foul play. Even though you intimidated it, the real precarious position that Groudon was put in by the Guardian of Alola, really interesting to see that used with a very clear and obvious follow-up. Now you've got 2 Pokemon against an Umbreon. And again, I think for Hirofumi, that's just not going to be enough. While it is a signature Pokemon, while it is an interesting adaptation at the World Championships, this matchup just doesn't seem like the one for it.
No, I mean, we saw that foul play match up against that Yveltal with the Dark Aura on the field, and it was maybe like a 5-hit knockout, a 6-hit knockout, and I just don't think those are turns that this Umbreon is going to have. You know, yes, the Yveltal is going to struggle to deal damage with it as well, and certainly the presence of this Groudon on the field for Kazuki gives Umbreon the opportunity to use more Moonlight to get health back, but those Moonlights are turns that Hirofumi isn't dealing damage, and certainly turns that Kazuki can capitalize on with the presence of his Yveltal.
Yeah, we'll see exactly what the plan is to try and get out of this pickle. Snarl slowly wearing down this Umbreon. Got to lower that special attack, right? That's clearly what it's relying on to deal damage back. I think maybe just trying to make sure that a Snarl doesn't hit that Groudon. You want to make sure the Groudon's doing as much as possible. Your Eruption's not going to be a winner right now, so you need the Earth Power or the Hidden Power, if that's really what you want to go for, to be doing as much as possible. Those Snarls doing no damage after a couple Snarls from the Yveltal on Kazuki's side of the field.
Yeah, and that Groudon will immediately go for the Earth Power, and we get to see how much damage it does to this Umbreon. And interestingly enough, you know, Umbreon could potentially have the opportunity to go for a Moonlight here, as Foul Play was indeed enough to knock out that Groudon. So it is down to the 2 Dark-type Pokemon on the field, Umbreon, Yveltal. Umbreon has access to Moonlight. Umbreon can heal up its health. As far as we know about this Yveltal, it does not have access to a similar thing. I think it's great that Kazuki has been using Snarl to lower the special attack of that Umbreon, but you have to wonder how exactly this is going to play out as we see a forfeit click in from Kazuki, and Hirofumi takes game 1 here of the top 4 match at the World Championships.
I think that's a really interesting choice, actually, knowing about that potential Moonlight play, grinding down the time, really, really nasty. That's just a fantastic knowledge of exactly how this Umbreon's going to work. And I know some people at home may be saying, how does Umbreon beat Yveltal? I'll tell you, it's going to take a long time, and it's going to be a whole lot of Moonlight. It doesn't look
we would have been here for a while.
It doesn't look like the most traditional answer to Yveltal, but apparently it's good enough to get there. So,
or at least good enough for Kazuki to not put himself in that position in a Game 1 situation.
Yeah.
You have to wonder if it's going to be the Yveltal and the Umbreon staring each other down here at the end of Game 2, whether or not he just goes for that, knowing that he needs that win. He needs to take those chances to play that mind game.
We'll see exactly what the adaptations are in this round. I'm interested in exactly what Kazuki does differently. I feel like he had a lot of times where there was some really good pressure down and he just didn't capitalize on it. I think Hirofumi made some interesting switches in that game. Some Salamence coming in at impromptu times, but getting away with it, avoiding a hidden Power Ice, maybe a little bit of pre-game knowledge that he got there, because that's not usually the kind of switch you'd be making.
No.
I am a little bit concerned, that we saw the Umbreon get away with it for so long, get those Moonlights down. And of course the Moonlight always going to be super effective. There's no rain in the form of Kyogre to slow that down, and just bringing 2 Groudons becomes so problematic.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to me as well to look at how Hirofumi sort of powered through that game. The Umbreon was the last Pokemon standing on the field, and that really was enough. You know, the Tapu Lele, I think something that a lot of trainers, look for to bring that offensive pressure, especially when you know it's going to be holding something like a Choice Scarf, locking into Dazzling Gleam just to deal small amounts of consistent damage. And, just enough turns like that added up over time that really gave Hirofumi that advantage. Like you said, there were certainly many turns where Kazuki had that offensive pressure, had that momentum, but Hirofumi just taking his time, playing the board positioning very well, and bringing himself into a victory.
Yeah, well, the leads landing on the field exactly the same as we saw in Game 1. Both trainers probably feeling like they just need to make adaptations in the middle of the set. Umbreon and Tapu Lele for Hirofumi, Kimura, and Kazuki Kobayashi leading with the Yveltal and Groudon. Groudon, Primal Reversion. Nothing new here. It's been like this for the last 2 days, ladies and gents, and that's going to be a big offensive threat before it loses any of its special attack stat.
Yeah, so going back to Game 1, Turn 1, we saw the Umbreon switch out, we saw the Salamence take the field, we saw Tapu Lele lock into Dazzling Gleam from Hirofumi, and we saw Kazuki immediately go on the offensive with that Hidden Power, Ice, and an attack from that Yveltal. Whether or not Yveltal and Groudon and Tapu Lele and Umbreon go for those same moves again is really up in the air. I like that these trainers brought the same leads because this does give them an opportunity, like you said, to make adjustments in the middle of the game, to make adjustments as to how they play. And if they were to hypothetically catch their opponent off guard with a helping hand from that Umbreon, this would be an amazing opportunity for that to deal some big, big damage.
Yeah, we'll see exactly what this damage is going to look like when it comes out from Tapu Lele. It was all heading towards that Groudon, which did protect, and that helping hand complete null and void. A Snarl is going to be the opening gambit from this Yveltal, trying to make up for some of the boost that it is getting. That's been really, really key to see exactly how that shakes out, and this Tapu Lele now becoming a whole lot less scary after one smart protect and opening of a door for Kazuki Kobayashi.
Yeah, and that certainly revealed as well to Kazuki what move Hirofumi was hoping for with that Tapu Lele. I think it was actually a Psychic that came out from that Tapu Lele to target down that Groudon. If Tapu Lele is indeed locked into Psychic, it cannot be dealing damage to Yveltal at all.
Right.
And the helping hand with the Psychic is going to deal a massive amount of damage to whatever Pokemon switches into that spot, provided it doesn't also share Dark typing.
Yeah, and there it is, the Incineroar confirming what we saw last turn. The Psychic isn't going to be able to deal any damage. So assuming that Hirofumi is forced to switch out, that gives a little bit of an opening right here for the side of Kazuki. No switch right now. We did see the Tapu Lele fail to land an attack because of the double Dark typing. We see a foul play into Umbreon, not so important, and actually pretty sizable critical hit.
hit.
Yeah, critical hit, foul play into Incineroar. but this may be a better turn. Obviously, Hirofumi knows that he can't Psychic, knows he's going to have to switch, and we'll see if that switch can be capitalized on by Kazuki Kobayashi.
Yeah, and if he does have a Pokemon like that Salamence in the back of the party, a perfect opportunity to get an Intimidate down onto the Incineroar on Kazuki's side of the field. You know, he might be weakening his matchup between the Yveltal and the Umbreon should it come to that, but there is still plenty of time for Hirofumi to go ahead, switch those Pokemon around, and get that Umbreon and the Yveltal really back on the field when they are not intimidated. But that Tapu Lele just content to sit there.
Well, it sits there and it takes a decent amount of damage from a foul play. It's literally going to be an exchange of foul plays. Clearly, Hirofumi happy to open up the tournament with a really, trying to open up an opportunity for Psychic. It does try and deal some damage with foul play to Incineroar, but Incineroar sticks around and just removes that Tapu Lele from play. So the Pokemon advantage, again, heading over to Kazuki Kobayashi early, and he sees this Salamence. He knows how to deal with this Salamence.
He does. Unfortunately for him, the way that he deals with that Salamence is in the back of his party. That Groudon will not be damaged and will have the opportunity to maneuver onto the field in a way that, won't necessarily punish him for that. But, we saw the tailwind from the Salamence in Game 1 from Hirofumi. This is a perfect opportunity for him to go for that. Maybe give him a bit of a speed advantage. We know the Groudon has that special typing. Maybe a Snarl or two might give him an advantage. Certainly against Tapu Koko as well. There are plenty of options here for Hirofumi. Just because he lost the Tapu Lele already in this game too does not mean that he's necessarily at a disadvantage yet.
We'll see what the Tapu Koko does. It's going to be that focus for next turn. Right now, the Salamence that just came in to replace the fallen Tapu Lele will be Mega Evolving as soon as possible. Not trying to swivel around with any Intimidates. And the Helping Hand is partnering up with Salamence, Umbreon wanting to get rid of something. The Yveltal does protect, and it may be another one of those turns where everything is committed to a protecting slot. The Tapu Koko gets in scot-free, able to come in and do exactly what it needs in this turn. And we saw a number of options from Tapu Koko already. An Electro Web would be really nasty against something like the Salamence, which does rely on its speed. Of course, something like the Nature's Madness or even the Guardian of Alola would be great at dealing with something like this Umbreon. So certainly some really good options on the board right now for Kazuki Kobayashi. Hirofumi Kimura not at a loss though.
Yeah, I really like how Hirofumi is trying to go for those huge knockouts on Kazuki's Pokemon. I think he's in a fairly comfortable position to do so. He does have the game advantage, and, catching your opponent by surprise is always very important when there's so much on the line.
Yeah, well, this is going to be the Protect on Salamence, buying him a little bit of time, and no damage coming down from either of the Pokemon on Kazuki's side of the field, as the Umbreon just retaliates with a foul play. Does, of course, hit that Yveltal. Not going to be very effective. A little bit of damage may help out in the long run, but for a defensive turn, that was pretty good from Hirofumi. Yeah. Knowing that he was going to go after the Salamence and just keeping it safe with the Protect.
And Salamence is really Hirofumi's best Pokemon to be dealing damage right now, so keeping that safe, just gives Umbreon more of an opportunity to slowly start whittling things down, which is the strategy we saw work out so well for him in Game 1.
It's not going to be safe this turn. It eats a Volt Switch from this Tapu Koko, which leaves the field immediately afterwards. Good damage, of course, an interesting typing to be hitting with electric type moves, Dragon and Flying. One resist, one, of course, a little bit weaker to it. Really good amount of damage, and it may put it in range for this Yveltal to be able to clear up with the Dark Aura with some of its big heavyweight attacks that it packs. We'll see exactly how it decides to proceed through this turn after we get the switch in for the Tapu Koko.
Yeah, but Kazuki really taking his time here. It's a tough decision. We know that it's either going to be the Incineroar or the Groudon taking the field for it. You send in the Incineroar, you get to intimidate that Salamence. We saw it go for a double edge in the previous turn. That'll certainly weaken that attacking potential, but, also puts Incineroar in risk of getting knocked out. If you send in the Groudon, the sunlight comes back out onto the field. That Umbreon is going to have the opportunity to use those Moonlights to, honestly, its best potential. And, you're really starting to weaken, I think, one of the cornerstones of your team. So it was a very tough decision. I like how Kazuki went for the Groudon, but, Hirofumi just taking this opportunity to sort of set things up for later.
Well, he does get the Tailwind in play. That could be really useful, but it will cost Salamence very dearly. Salamence removed from play, and Hirofumi happy to play the rest of this game in a very literal 2v4 situation. That said, the Umbreon's trying to balance that count pretty quickly, and a foul play on Groudon on the way in, even though we do know Kazuki's is trained very, very heavily in its special attack stat. You can't get rid of a naturally high attack, and then you're in a position to just turn around and say, you know what, I'll catch you with foul play. We've now got the mirrors between these Groudons, and I think this is an interesting matchup. We saw it come into play in Game 1. Of course, if you're the physical Groudon and you're stuck Precipice Blading, you have no answer to this Evil Tile, and there is a good chance this Evil Tile could cause so many problems for Hirofumi.
Yeah, that foul play that Yveltal has, along with the Sucker Punch, is just a huge amount of board pressure that Hirofumi has to deal with. And if you're going to try to remove that board pressure, you know, Helping Hand, something is certainly going to be your best bet. But did he make the correct prediction?
Well, we'll see a Protect on this Groudon. We are going to see a big attack, a Fire Punch, land on this Groudon into this Evil Tile. The Sun coming into play. There's not been any Intimidate cycling for Hirofumi here, so that Fire Punch just doing the business right there. Of course, the Tailwind helping out so drastically in the amount of kind of turn order. I don't even know if the Intimidate would have helped, but Hirofumi looking real happy with that, how that turn went down.
And that's the amazing thing about Helping Hand as a support move, is that it makes these Intimidates a little bit less costly to take. Yes, your Umbreon isn't going to be able to deal damage that turn, but look at Hirofumi's team. Look at how he set up his board. Umbreon's not the Pokemon that he wanted to be dealing damage that turn. He wanted to knock out the Yveltal, and what better way to do that than a nice Helping Hand?
Yeah, well, everything is kind of being put into one spot right now. He's got the Tailwind in play. He's got the Helping Hand partner, and it's all about winning in the next couple of turns for Hirofumi Kimura. You know, he wants to be able to land some big Precipice Blades, I imagine. There's no Pokemon that's flying or levitating for him right now, and switches like this could get punished real hard by Hirofumi. All he needs to do is just sit there and throw out damage. He is going to buy himself a turn, avoid that Fake Out with the Protect, and he knows that things are coming up his way. The Fake Out or attack from Incineroar going into that, and that does mean that the foul play from Umbreon unimposed, just doing a little bit of damage to Tapu Koko.
And that's okay. Groudon just needed to avoid the threat of the Fake Out that turn. If Kazuki wants to go for Fake Out later, he's going to have to switch that Groudon back in, and that Groudon could easily be the target of a Precipice Blades. You know, the Tailwind is in Hirofumi's favor. The board positioning is in Hirofumi's favor. You know, Helping Hand, Precipice Blades, you know, provided accuracy is on his side, could easily bring him into Championship Sunday at this point. He is so close to taking this game.
Well, Tapu Koko doesn't want to get hit with anything from Groudon, protecting itself this turn. There's one Protect of importance, and it is going to be Precipice Blades. No real shock there. Will land into this Incineroar slot and put himself in a great position. Kazuki Kobayashi looking a little bit resigned to his fate right now, I think. Of course, there may be a world where Groudons could match up. But this Umbreon's going to be buying a whole lot of time. Another Moonlight bringing it back to literally full health at this juncture.
It didn't even need the Sunlight boost for that one. It was just happy to take this opportunity to heal itself right back up to full. You have to look at the board right now, and you have to wonder, what are Kazuki's options? You know, maybe he can stall out the remainder of this Tailwind and try and do some big damage here, but
Kazuki's option right now, quite honestly, I think is Tapu Koko, bring the Groudon on Hirofumi's side exceptionally low, and then make sure your Groudon moves before it and gets to knock it out with Earth Power. That's really your only option, but if you go silly with it and you don't get away with it, you know, this Umbreon's going to put you really in the corner. There's Nature's Madness. That's going to bring it down to half.
And Groudon moves first with an Earth Power.
Yeah, Earth Power's enough to clean it up. That said, Umbreon, the brave little Umbreon that could for Hirofumi, just trying to run this one back. There's the foul play, targeting down that Groudon, and not enough for a knockout right now. But you do have to wonder, you know, is it going to be enough to get there. I think a combination of Nature's Madness and a follow-up attack should level this one up for Kazuki Kobayashi, but losing that Tailwind was absolutely devastating for Hirofumi.
That just ran out at the exact perfect wrong time, unfortunately, but Kazuki finds a way to bring himself back into this game and bring himself into Game 3. Nature's Madness does connect with that Umbreon. It's going to, slice its health immediately in half. It's going to reveal, one of that Citrus Berry that we saw earlier on, and unless Umbreon finds a way to knock out this Tapu Koko this turn, I think we're going to be looking at a Game 3.
Yeah, I mean, this Umbreon's going to have to buy so much time, right, with Moonlights and wait for power points to run out. So these players just finding adaptations to make. We are going to see the Z move. It's going to be the exact same one we saw in Game 1, Guardian and Alola. It's no surprise that it's actually carrying Tapunium Z rather than the Fairium Z that some of them have been holding for Twinkle Tackle, but that makes things very easy to deal with this Umbreon. We do know it takes hits so well. It's been played in other formats, not so much in the video game championships, but it's well known for how stout and sturdy it is. These attacks that deal a set amount of damage are really one of the best ways to get around it. Its health brought right down into the red, no berry to consume. Groudon following up with Earth Power, no messing about, and we are going to be sending ourselves to Game 3. Hirofumi Kimura not able to hold on, not able to capitalize enough on that Tailwind with his own Groudon, and Kazuki Kobayashi leveling up the set.
Yeah, it just goes to show you, even when, you're at a little bit of a disadvantage, it's possible to stall out those Tailwinds with the right switches, with the right protects, and then just come in with an advantageous position. Great information for us here. The Groudon on Kazuki's side of the field did move faster than the Groudon on Hirofumi's side of the field. And as a result, I think that was sort of the key moment, that key piece of information that we didn't necessarily see play out in Game 1, play out here in Game 2. And it's certainly something that Hirofumi is going to have to keep in mind going into Game 3. Other adjustments he's probably considering. We saw him, go for a lot of those turns early on with the Helping Hand, with that Tapu Lele locking itself into Psychic against 2 Dark Pokemon. I don't think you can take that risk in this situation anymore. Yes, you want to use Helping Hand in the Umbreon to deal, very strong attacks, but, maybe leave the Psychic Terrain, boost at home and go for something like the Dazzling Gleam we saw in Game 1. Try to go back to that slower strategy, add up that chip damage on your opponent's Pokemon, and just use the fact that Tapu Lele does get access to those Fairy type attacks as well to, not necessarily lock you out, so to speak.
Yeah, I was a little bit concerned by Tapu Lele being locked into a Psychic type move with 2 Dark types over on Kazuki's side of the field, so leave that one at home. A lot of people online back in Umbreon, a lot of people are a big fan of that, but Kazuki really wants to spoil that party. There is an interesting option on his team that I don't think we've touched on much, the Mimikyu, which may struggle against some of the other selections. You don't want to get caught with, say, Sunsteel Strike while Disguise is up and go down that way. But really interesting, a Mimikyu would, of course, hit a pure Dark type in Umbreon super effectively if it could find that opening. So who knows if it's going to be weaving into the team right now for Kazuki Kobayashi. But your tournament life in top 4 is on the line. Best of 1 right now. Both trainers at 1-1. You've got to win this to advance to the finals of the World Championships. This is it. This is your last chance. If you lose this, your day is done in top 4. And we are going to see an adaptation from Hirofumi Kimura. Yveltal and Groudon the same for Kazuki, but he's adapted over to Umbreon and Salamence.
We've seen Kazuki rely on the Hidden Power Ice from this Groudon multiple times to threaten the Salamence on Hirofumi's side of the field. And I think by revealing that Salamence immediately off the bat, you get the opportunity to switch it out. You get the opportunity to save it for later. And I think more importantly, you don't necessarily have to make the decision early on. What do I lock my Tapu Lele into? Do I switch it out and take damage as a result? I think this is a much more sort of flexible lead for Hirofumi, and I like that. We know that this Umbreon could go for some big snarls here to weaken those special attacks from the Groudon. Maybe try to find Salamence an opening to get a big attack in. Helping Hand would certainly help with that as well. He has options, and I think that's the big difference between Game 2 and Game 3. And as a result, Kazuki forced to switch that Yveltal out for something that can handle this combination a bit better.
That choice is going to be the Tapu Koko coming in with the Electric Surge, setting up the Electric Terrain. Not really really the most essential in this, but does help out with those little bits of damage it's trying to put down. Salamence Mega Evolving, no surprise there. I don't think this is the matchup where you want to be trying to grab a second Intimidate. It doesn't really look like it's something Hirofumi's too worried about. You know, he does only have the one in Salamence. No follow-up there from the Incineroar. The helping hand from Umbreon giving a big boost to the Salamence, which does start out with a Hyper Voice, targeting both down, getting a good amount into play.
That Groudon, it didn't go for the Hidden Power Ice. Instead, it went for an Eruption, and that, you know, only did a little bit of damage to the Salamence. It brought Umbreon down to half, but it looks like it stopped right before it would have consumed that Citrus Berry. So, you know, almost an advantage in that regard. You know, Hirofumi, he left his Salamence open for an attack, but, you know, Kazuki didn't call that. He does have the opportunity now to go for something like the Nature's Madness or the, you know, Guardian of Alola to deal, you know, that big damage to these two Pokemon, but you don't need that right now. You know, what Hirofumi needs to do is find a way to stop these Pokemon from dealing that big damage. And if he's not able to, you know, Kazuki will probably be taking a knockout this turn.
Well, it's not going to be taking a knockout with something like that Groudon, because that's just going to be protecting an Electro Web, another exchange of kind of chip damage, I guess, over onto the other side of the field. And we did see the berry go off just there for this Umbreon, so that's going to be healing back up nice and healthy. But you've got to wonder, did Hirofumi commit to one of these single target attacks? He did, and he lands it on the Tapu Koko.
Oh no! The Tapu Koko is able to just hold on.
This Tapu Koko is going to cause so many problems now. It does have access to the Electro Web. It was going to be able to go before the Salamence anyway. It did that last turn, and it's going to be able to keep dealing good damage with that. Those little bits of chip damage are going to add up, and even though the right call was made by Hirofumi, of course, Aerial 8 making that double edge a big flying type attack, getting a little boost as well, it's just not going to work well into the electric typing of the ever-present Tapu Koko.
You have to wonder if Hirofumi and Kazuki are going to trade knockouts here. You know, the Tapu Koko going for the Electro Web, knocking out that Mega Salamence, and then the Groudon, you know, or excuse me, the Umbreon on Hirofumi's side of the field going for the knockout onto that Tapu Koko. I think that the, you know, the Salamence is more key of a Pokemon for Hirofumi moving forwards in this game, looking at what happened in Game 1, looking at what happened in Game 2, and I like how he protected the Salamence here, but the big question is, will this Umbreon even be able to get that KO on the Tapu Koko?
We'll see what Umbreon's able to do. Well, it's the only thing attacking in this turn. Its speed significantly lowered once again. This Salamence really struggling. There is going to be a follow-up attack from this Groudon. There it is, another Eruption. We did see how much it did in the first turn, and Umbreon not able to hold on. I think one of the biggest problems for Kazuki Kobayashi in the previous two games was working his way around Umbreon, and this time he's gone on the offense from the get-go and put himself in a great position to deal with that. That said, if there's a Pokemon to swing momentum back in your favor, I think a Choice Scarf carrying Tapu Lele is certainly of interest.
It will be able to move first before the Tapu Koko on Kazuki's side of the field, and, you know, does have the opportunity here to lock itself into a move that will be able to deal some damage to a Dark-type Pokemon if that Yveltal or maybe even that Incineroar makes another appearance from Kazuki's side of the field. But this Groudon, you know, this Tapu Lele isn't going to be able to knock out both the Tapu Koko and the Groudon at the same time. So if Hirofumi decides to maybe make a big play and go for like a Psychic into that Groudon spot and Kazuki doesn't protect it, you know, this could be his opportunity to find his way back into the game.
Yeah, Dazzling Gleam could be an interesting and rather safe play here. That said, if it is what he decides to go for, it's not going to get any damage down on Groudon in this turn. The Protect from Groudon coming out first. But the Dazzling Gleam will pick up the knockout on Tapu Koko. That's certainly going to help. And I do like the pressure this applies. Literally the combination of Dazzling Gleam and then big attacks from Salamence are going to be rough. And to make up for that earlier Electro Web, Salamence carves out an opening, knows about the Protect from Groudon, and sets up a Tailwind. So the next 3 turns, Hirofumi may be without his trusty Umbreon, but he could be in an ace position to push through the rest of this game.
I love the positioning of that Tapu Lele in that last turn. By bringing the Tapu Lele onto the field, I think Hirofumi gave himself the opportunity to go for that Tailwind. You know, the Groudon had to protect itself. If Tapu Lele were to have gone for a big attack, you know, that would have been a lot of Kazuki's firepower just, you know, removed from the field. go for the safe knockout, lock yourself into the Dazzling Gleam, know that you'll be able to deal damage to those Dark-type Pokemon later on if you don't want to switch around, but go for the Tailwind with the Salamence if you get it, and especially if Kazuki doesn't send in that Incineroar with access to Fake Out. This is a turn for the Salamence to attack that it wouldn't have had otherwise, and the fact that Hirofumi is saving it for later and sending his Groudon out onto the field, if it can remain on the field, if it doesn't take an Earth Power from Kazuki's Groudon, this could be Hirofumi's way into the championship Sunday.
This is crazy ambitious because bringing that in, of course, you know that Earth Power is the choice. All it needs is Kazuki to call out and be able to get there. And we'll see exactly how this turn starts to play out. The Dazzling Gleam, good amount of damage down on that Yveltal, bringing it under half. The Groudon is also brought under half by the collection of that. But there it is!
Oh, he called it!
The Earth Power from Kazuki Kobayashi isn't enough.
It's able to hold on. That
It's
was
not.
without any snarls.
That's not able to get there. That is such a good call. Knowing Salamence is leaving, seeing that he wants to bring that Groudon in to function well under Trick Room, he calls it, reads him really, really well there, but not able to get the knockout without the Snarl. That's pretty crazy.
And such an interesting combination of move selection as well. I'm pretty sure that Yveltal went for a Sucker Punch into the Salamence spot. You know, Salamence's flying does not make contact with the psychic terrain, would not have stopped the priority attack from getting the knockout, which would have automatically retargeted that Earth Power into the Tapu Lele. So yes, Hirofumi did make that switch, and yes, Kazuki called it, you know, in a beautiful way, but that Groudon just trained just enough to get one more attack in.
Well, after a dour previous turn, the Yveltal is leaving the field. Not too happy about it, and it looks like Kazuki Kobayashi is finding a strategy to burn through this Trick Room. Not Trick Room, Tailwind, my apologies. Obviously, there's only a couple turns remaining on it, and so a Fake Out would probably be a good option if, of course, Psychic Terrain wasn't in play. Want some bulk there to move that around. A Protect from Groudon means it's not going to take any damage this turn, and we get to see exactly how much Tapu Lele can do to Incineroar with Dazzling Gleam. It's not as much, it's a little under a quarter, but all of that is going to add up. The Groudon over on Hirofumi's side of the field, unable to land an attack onto the Incineroar.
And that was just really unfortunate. The Precipice Blades, I believe, they're just not making contact. And, you know, that it is what it is. Kazuki just has one more turn, I believe, to stall out this Tailwind. Hirofumi has one more opportunity to attack. And you have to wonder, you know, yes, you're locked into Dazzling Gleam, so you're going to do a bit more chip damage to both these Pokemon, but what do you do with Groudon in this situation? You know, Fire Punch isn't really going to help you out. You're forced to go for that Precipice Blades, but it's not the most accurate move. It can miss. And even if you do try to, like, switch around or otherwise buy yourself another opportunity to attack later on in the game, once Tailwind is gone, that's really it for this Groudon.
There really is a big concern on the field, though, in the form of Tapu Lele. There's no easy way to stop it. There's no protects over on Kazuki's side of the field. And then the follow-up Precipice Blades lands on both. Groudon is gone.
It's a double knockout.
Is gone. Tapu Lele free to do what it wants to the incoming Yveltal. Hirofumi Kimura and his trusty Umbreon team looking like there's going to be an easy punch the ticket into the finals tomorrow. That's going to be so close. This game really tough for him, losing the Umbreon that's been so influential early doors. But we've seen how this Yveltal fares against this Tapu Lele. We know exactly what happens. We know how much Dazzling Gleam does while it's spread. And I can tell you right now, I know how much it's going to do when it's single target. The switch out of the Groudon for Hirofumi Kimura, making sure that the Salamence gets its time to shine. Doesn't want to lose anything here. But Dazzling Gleam from Tapu Lele into Yveltal, single target, a critical hit to really secure Hirofumi Kimura's place in tomorrow's World Championship Final.
Yet another Japan national champion on an odd year, making it on